Глубоко уважаемые участники Конгресса,
dear participants, we start our second day. And we start from the panel discussion, the role of sports diplomacy and sports law and jurisprudence in sorting out contemporary challenges in sport. I'm privileged to introduce moderators and speakers. Nikolay, Peshin, Russia's moderator, Dr. Professor, Vice Rector on Scientific Work of Russian International Olympic University, head of the Chair of Administrative Law of Law School of Lomonosov University, head of the Scientific Education Center of Consultants and Sector Problems Sports of Law School of Lomonosov University, member of European Law Commission of Olympic Committee of Russia. Let's clap our hands for the moderator. Natalia Melnikova, Russia, Doctor of Pedagogical Sciences, Professor, head of the Chair of the History of Civilizations of Physical Culture, Sports and Olympic Education of Russian University of Sports.
Elsherif Ola.
Elsherif Ola, Egypt. The Chair of the History of Civilizations, Physical Culture, Sports and Olympic Education of Russian University of Zorigt. And also she represents the Hassan University, Egypt. Choizhgavaa, Zorigt, Baatar, Mongolia. President of the National Olympic Academy of Mongolia, President of the Federation of School Sports, Secretary General of the Federation of Track and Field of Mongolia, Director of the Central Sports School of Mongolia, Secretary of the Federation of Track and Field Athletics of Mongolia, President of the Federation of General Education of School, PhD in Pedagogics, Ali Jafar, Mohammed, Samaka, Iraq, and United Arab Emirates, Secretary General Sports Council, Olympic Committee of Iraq, Member Association of Sports Law, the South of Switzerland, Doctor of Science, Professor of Sports Law of American University in Dubai, Professor of the Faculty of Physical Education of Baatar University, Professor of Sports Management, Vice President of Iraq Federation of Basketball, Member of American Association of Basketball Coaches, NABC, CEO of the clubs of Alain Youth People and in the United Arab Emirates, Director of Sports Department of Iraq Sports Channel. And Nasrallah Hassan, Faez, Lebanon, member of the Council on the Nationalities under the government of Moscow, the PhD in Pedagogical Sciences, an advisor to the rector of the Russian Sports University on International Relations, chair of the board of Russian Society of Arabic Diaspora, which encompasses Syrian, Palestinian, Iraq, Lebanon, Yemen, Sudan, and Jordan Diaspora, president of the Lebanon Association, Lebanon House, the chair of the Journal of Al-Matahukak of the first in Russian Journal in Russian and Arabic Societies, member of the Palestinian Society. Moderators are here. So first will be Peshin Nikolay Leonidovich, the moderator. Thank you very much, Sergey. Good morning, dear colleagues. I'm so glad to see all of you here this morning. We are going to have a very interesting discussion. It's maybe challenging, but our organizers like us contemplating different challenging topics always. I would start from extending my heartfelt thanks to our wonderful organizers who prepared this Congress brilliantly. The subject matter of the discussion is the sports diplomacy and sports law this is sort of a very interesting fusion. Sport diplomacy is often referred to as a soft power because it expedites in smoothing up political standoff and let different political powers to approximate each other. Sports law is often referred to as a soft law. Why is it that? Because in sports law, we're not going to see many different institutions of coercion at the end of the day. Every time when we are discussing sports law, the most stringent part of that is sports sanctions. When we look at that, in most way, they are about banning athletes from participation, not personal liability when it's law, but just banning sanctioned athletes for participation in tournaments. But both definitions are very close. They're pretty much akin. Moreover, sports law is the basis for sports diplomacy. I have been engaged in sports law since long way back, and I'm the only one in our discussion who is the sports lawyer. And before we get down to discussing this phenomenon per se, that is sports diplomacy, I'm going to say a few words about the way sports law impacts all those things. First of all, we are going to discuss three major pillars or levels of sports law in a generic way, because when we are discussing sports law, at the end of the day, it's some kind of a phenomenon which is rather limited. It's confined to the issues of regulations of sports relations. But when we speak about diplomacy, it's another level, another tier. And first we start from international law here. In the system of international law, it's convention, regulation. But there is not a single convention nowadays which would disclose the issues of sports diplomacy. This is one of very important controversial points we should sort out. Maybe we'll try to find something in the international law which would become the legal basis, regulatory basis for sports diplomacy. But instead, we're going to see several resolutions of UN General Assembly, resolution of 25th of October 1993 about Olympic peace, or the resolution about happier life on planet, the declaration of the millennium, that's a known document, the Agenda 2030. These are the documents which are of recommendatory nature, advisory nature. They do not set up stringent legal frameworks. So in the system of international law, the regulation related to sports diplomacy is of advisory nature only, with very broad margin of appreciation. Another level of tier is national law. Not very stringent regulation is there as well. Mindful of our system of national law, everything we see is encompassed by Strategy 2030. It's just the indication or mention of sports diplomacy. One of the priorities of national regulation is the development of sports diplomacy. And in our national regulation, sports diplomacy is perceived in a rather narrow way, like relations between the states, the relations between the ministers of sports of different countries, agreements on having some joint programs and projects. And then we are getting down to the level of sports law, and all those definitions of sports diplomacy per se as a specified type of diplomatic activity when sport is being used as the specific tool, sometimes political tool, to sort out some external political tasks. All the formal things are articulated in the sports law. What is a sports law? I mentioned that it's a soft law, or like lawyers are referring to it as corporate law, rules and law ensuing from the corporations. Let's take international federations or IOC as corporations, which publish some regulations, some bylaws, some charters, like the Charter of IOC, Olympic Charter, informal constitution, encompassing the entire system of sports law. So that's what sports diplomacy, its regulation is all about. It's based on regulatory documents of IOC and other subjects of sports. And when we are referring to sports diplomacy in the context of the sports law, there are many issues raised, and they are reflected in those acts, but they are not tied to external political activities or sports activities for that matter. I wouldn't say they are outside issues or issues of secondary nature, but they are not explicitly related to sports. Let's say education in sports. My colleagues will have presentations on that. Next will be Natalia, Melnikova. For many years on end, she has been the head of master's degree program in education and sports. Some of her disciples are here in this hall, and they will fill us in on what they achieved already. Such programs are also one of quite commendable things which expedites us to develop this soft power, which is called sports diplomacy. I'm just a humble moderator, so I'm not going to abuse the time anymore. If there are any questions, I'll take them gladly. But without much ado, I would like to give the floor to the speakers. I am privileged to invite Natalia Melnikova, Doctor of Pedagogical Science, Professor, the President of Central Sports Economy, the member of Executive Committee of Sports and Olympic Education, Russian University of Sports. Thank you very much, Nikolay. And by the same token, I would like to thank our organizers for having been invited to this convention. We are going to discuss very important implications of contemporary reality of our world and how it's related to sport. I would like to highlight the studies and research our chair has been doing in sports diplomacy, and what are the outcome of scientific research of that? What are our accomplishments along the way? And I'm here to say that in 2016, Vladimir Putin, the president of our country, made a special assignment and charge for the scientists, which steps we should make to sort out the challenges which evolved when our athletes were banned from Rio de Janeiro sports games in 2016. An independent anti-doping commission was set up. It was headed by Vitaly Smirnov, and the well-known known activist of the International Olympic Movement, the honorary member of IOC, honorary member of Olympic Committee of Russia. And likewise, I was invited to become part of this commission. And when we met at our first meeting after Rio de Janeiro Games, although we started working throughout the game, started working with WADA and the IOC to put together the roadmap. And in the first meeting, as the commission member representing of International Affairs University from Moscow, he was there as well. And we figured out that we are representing two major universities of the country, turning out athletes. And it's our university, and GIMO, that is diplomacy, that is the University of International Affairs. So our task would be joint one.
Those who will help to deal with the challenges, and we began to work on the comprehensive program, Diplomacy in Sports, the program which is curriculum, which is being carried out by 2 schools. And along with this program, we started a master's course for management at the university of ours. Well, we can't say that it was such a new thing for us, because of course we worked on topical issues, on the matters of the Olympic movement, but nonetheless I would like to present to you some of the results of our work. I can do it myself. I can change slides myself if I have this chance. Yes, all right, we'll do it. I'll cope. Right, you feel comfortable seated. Right, so as for the purpose of our investigation. Now, the purpose is to analyze the forms and methods of diplomacy in sports, its place in the overall concept of diplomacy, to look at the historical specifics of the diplomacy in sports in the context of the international Olympic movement, and to investigate the process of the development of diplomacy in sports in the 20th, 21st century. The term diplomacy in sports became quite widely spread at the end of the 20th century. And now, as for the terminology, now we talk about soft power, and this is soft power. There are different areas of diplomacy in sports. Allow me to draw your attention to this particular diagram, which represents the hard and the soft power, the public diplomacy, and different forms of diplomacy which are absolutely applicable to the field of sports and physical culture. And now, what are the main subjects of the diplomacy in sports? We analyzed international sports organizations, intergovernment political associations, state departments in sports, public and private organizations, educational, scientific organizations, and the organizing committees of different competitions, national and international. As for the main instruments, we analyzed among those the ones that are listed here. The elements and different events and components. And allow me to go back to history and mention that the first manifestation of the diplomacy in sports was the truce during the Olympic Games in ancient Greece, Ekehyria. And that was the first obvious phenomenon that united people, brought people together, which made it possible to develop under friendly and peaceful conditions. And of course, when creating the International Olympic Committee, Pierre de Coubertin, first of all, addressed his counterparts who worked in the field of education. And in the first Olympic Committee, there were representatives there were three representatives of the diplomatic corps. By education, there were diplomats, and that's very important because they represented Latin American region, New Zealand, and even in spite of the fact that some of them never took part in the sessions of the International Olympic Committee, but working in their own countries and having diplomatic relations with numerous countries, they thus were able to help to expand the Olympic movement. Diplomacy helped in this sense. Well, of course, there were different political conflicts and challenges emerged, and the Olympic Games were impossible because of the military actions. Then some of the athletes were not permitted to take part in the competitions, and of course the competitions were sometimes used for ideological purposes. And once again, the international organizations and international competitions can also help to change the image of the state. And we list here the Olympic Games and comprehensive international competitions, which reflected the processes that we are also investigated. And then finally, we also analyzed such sports initiatives carried out within the framework of building diplomatic relations, and they were referred to as the diplomacy, the ping-pong diplomacy, hockey diplomacy, cricket diplomacy, baseball diplomacy, the forming of a symbolic team at the Olympic Games, which was a united team that was possible. As for the diplomacy in sports in our country, here I would like to draw your attention to the international relations and contacts that different organizations, international organizations, sports organizations have. We say that 1920s, 30s are very often referred to as the years of isolation, external and in sports. We did not take part in the Olympic Games voluntarily, but they were continued, and there were quite a lot of different competitions organized under the auspices of the Red International, the competition of the 1930s, the Spartakiad is one example of that. And of course, the second half of the 20th century, the integration of the Soviet Union into the international Olympic movement, that was very important. That was the really the period of prosperity and flourishing of the system of sports in Russia and the Soviet Union. We had our representatives in many of the bodies of the Olympic movement, and about 70 representatives of us, and we could have an impact on what was happening at the time. And here are the main aspects associated with the diplomacy in sports in the Soviet days, again listed here. And of course, after the disintegration of the Soviet Union, well, of course, the Russian Federation representatives of our country found themselves in a rather difficult situation, because if the state does not exist any longer, then it means that we do not have representatives of that gone state in many of the international organizations. But the work continued, and it continues. And I would like to say that the results of our study is published in the Central Olympic Academy publication. The Russian Olympic Committee helps us with funding that, and we even have the Olympic Bulletin number 21, together with GIMO, dedicated specifically to the issues of diplomacy in sports. And you can find here the bas-relief of Alexander Nevsky. This saint is the patron saint of diplomacy in Russia. And there's another collection of articles which we also prepared with the Russian Olympic University and with the Olympic Committee Committee of Russia, the Central Olympic Academy, and GIMO. And there you will find the results of the work done by the postgraduate students of several universities in Russia that are immediately involved in the issues related to international Olympic movement and diplomacy in sports. And here is what I would like to say finally. History is science, of course, but it's based exclusively on facts. And so the historical facts indicate that in spite of different political situations, ideological differences, representatives of our country in education, in science, were always able to find methods and forms of interaction in order to make sure that representatives of our country are able to take part in different competitions of different levels, and the achievements of our country in the field of sports and the Olympic movement will be the highest sports achievements. But as for the questions, we are ready to answer them. Now, thank you very much. Thank you for your attention. Thank you. Thank you, Natalia Yurievna. Indeed, colleagues, I suggest that we ask questions at the very end of the session, because it seems to me that it is important to give every speaker a chance to present the way they view the present-day diplomacy in sports and the problems and the solutions. We have most respected representatives of the friendly countries, Mr. Baatar, Mr. Samaka, Mr. Faez, but if possible, I will give the floor first to the representative of Egypt. As a continuation of the presentation, Elsherif Allah, she is a student at the master level of the chair of the history of civilization, and she will share her understanding of diplomacy in sports with us. Good morning, dear Chairman, colleagues, speakers. I'm happy to meet you here. I work as a lecturer at the University of Sports in Egypt. I also studied in Germany, and I have the experience of working in the Cardiff Metropolitan University. And
to go straight to the point, our presentation is going to be in English. So our presentation today, it will speak about the foreign relation between Russia and Egypt in the sphere of sports diplomacy, или отношения между Египтом и Россией.
So relations between Russia and Egypt in sports diplomacy.
We know that Egypt has a very advantageous geopolitical and military strategic location, as it connected the whole world together, Africa, Asia, Europe, and Arab world. Due to this location is connecting all the countries together. The most popular sports in ancient Egypt history will not be too much. As we see here, we have in our history wrestling, fencing, archery, running, weightlifting, acrobatic dance, hunting, more and more and more swimming. Например, for example, swimming или плавание – это в Louvre в Париж теперь. As we see here, the fields of activities in the Ministry of Foreign Affairs for Arab Republic of Egypt, we have the sphere of economic relations, environmental relations like COP27, that was this year, and political relations, cultural relations, and we have a lack in sport relations. Simply before colonization, or in the time of colonization, vremea okupația, after independence, and from 1993 to present. In the time of colonization, we have only economic relations between Russia and Egypt. Then we have, after independence, после независимости, we have economic relations, military cooperation, culture contacts. And then, after that, from 1993, we have only 2 contracts. In 1993 and in 2021, the latest contract, ili memorandum for sport diplomacy. As we see here, for the last memorandum, for example, they was having a little bit activities that was not active too much, like squash, football, sport, para-sport, and educational conferences. That was the activities that they was establishing in our memorandum. Why Egypt? Because maybe they choose the squash, for example, as we having the higher rank in squash, the 1st and 2nd and 6th and 7th and 10th world ranking, 10th world ranking. For the Russian diplomacy relationships with the whole world, they have over 86 protocol, ili memorandum, and with 68 countries, 7 of them are Arabian countries, as Egypt is one of them, and 7 of them are African countries, and 8 of them are Arabian countries, and Egypt is one of them. As we see here, the ambassador of Russia, for example, sports diplomacy in Singapore, play the match hockey. Why Egypt? Because we are leading the sport in the Arabian world, as we having in the last Olympic Games 132 participants or athletes in the Olympic Games, but not only not only the numbers, but the quality, the results. If we are looking for the results and comparing the results of our country, Egypt, with the Arabian world, okay, we are leading the Arabian world. But if we are comparing with, if we are comparing, for example, with Russia, as you see here, summa, the whole number, the total number of the medals, 193 medals in the last Olympic Games. So that's why we need this relationship. For the strategy of sports diplomacy, we are recommending this strategy for forward memorandum that will be, for the next memorandum that will be in May and June 2023. We already sent the recommendation to the ambassador of Egypt, and he will send it, or they will help the Ministry of Sport and Youth, and also the Ministry of Higher Education, of Scientific Research, and in future will be the Ministry of Commerce and Industry in sports industry. As a sports, if we're looking for example, today only we will take one example, the Ministry of Youth and Sport, it's divided into 2 sections, youth and sport. And sport is divided into, or including 2 departments, professional sports and sports for all, ili masovi sporta. Masovi sport. We analyzed only professional sport for now. As we see here, we classified the results for the last 3 Olympic Games, 2012, 2016, 2020, to 4 classes. Class A, we found out that 11 common sports that we can do cooperation, not only squash and handball, that was in the last memorandum. For example, we can add more sports that Russia and Egypt have ranking. Class B, 7 common sports that even Russia having medals and Egypt doesn't have medals, and vice versa. Class C and D, it's not recommended to have communications or connections or relations in the next memorandum. That we have even bad results or never qualified in these sports like basketball, water polo, rugby, and so on, table tennis, football, triathlon. Simply, if we look for class A and B, as we see here on the slide, pentathlon, wrestling, fencing, taekwondo, handball, artistic swimming for Egypt, that is the results for the last 3 Olympics. For example, they have only 1 silver medal for pentathlon, for example. Russia, as we see here in wrestling, they have 13 medals, as we see here. So it's recommended to make more cooperation in these first 11 sports like pentathlon, wrestling, fencing, taekwondo, and handball. Class B, 7 types.
Why don't we have relations in karate? I know that it's possible to establish closer contacts in this field, or in rhythmic gymnastics.
So why we don't change the orbit, or why we don't change the experience between the 2 countries for players, judges, trainers, and so on. So in conclusion, we have a strong economic, political, and cultural relationships, foreign relationships between the 2 countries, but there is no comprehensive cooperation in the field of sport diplomacy. It's very less. We have a lack in that, and it's important to step for the further progressive development that can be the organization and holding for new forms and types of joint sports. I would like to acknowledge нашим заводящей кафедра Melnikova Natalia Yurievna.
I would like to thank Natalia Melnikova, head of our chair, director of our university, Sergei Seyranov,
for their support, endless support and motivation to help the researcher to conduct this study or researches. Thank you so much.
Thank you very much. Thank you very much, Shola, for your extremely interesting review. Thank you. Спасибо большое. Нам нужно двигаться дальше и с удовольствием.
We have to move forward, and I'm privileged to give the floor to Mongolian representative Zorigt, Baatar, Choizhgavaa. So what's your take on the role of sports diplomacy? Which challenges it can sort out nowadays? Thank you. I appreciate having been invited for your wonderful event. As to Mongolia, mindful of its geographic location, the country is very special. We are located between 2 great powers, Russia and China, and we are sort of inside, in between. And it has a strong bearing upon our sports diplomacy. We have to elaborate a special policy for that, especially mindful of all the turmoils in contemporary world, in geopolitics, and also lots of turmoils evolved amid the coronavirus and afterwards. But sports diplomacy, sports law are very important components for us. We should outreach other countries. and we should have cooperation. Our country, since long way back, since the times of Genghis Khan, was pursuing these special kind of policies and politics. Genghis Khan is a world-acclaimed character in the history. And we are trying to bring as lot of good to our generation ahead as we possibly can when it comes to their physical health, physical development. And we have been trying to make big strides forward in development of sport, and we should work and elaborate and streamline cross-border cooperation with China and alike with Russia, of course. And our sports academy in Mongolia announces periodically competition among secondary schools of Mongolia, and about 800,000 schools participate in this system of tournaments and school competitions. And we have got Olympic division in each and every of those schools. We have been trying to foster the spirit of the Olympics and to invest lofty ideas of the Olympic Games into those school children. We have got a streamlined sports system in Mongolia, and we have annual competitions as well, and 30 schools are awarded as best sports schools, and we provide them with different programs for sports development, and we also annually award the best sports teachers and sports coaches. We do it annually, I reiterate. Last year, 30 best teachers of physical culture were brought by us to Ulan-Ude, and we announced the forum for those best teachers of physical culture. They were discussing problems they have in common and their accomplishments as well. This forum came in very handy for all of us, and this year, by the end of May, we're going to announce another forum like that at Ulan-Ude. Annually, we host international conference with the participation of Russian academics, master degree students, sports academy representative, and Natalia Melnikova is also participating as well with her team. And we have got the participants from Uzbekistan, Tajikistan, Japan, South Korea, and we publish their presentations they send us over. That is from the last years. That's the analog of the materials of the conference. We published it last year. So we're going to have publications next year, and this year we are going to invite you to participate in our annual international conference. We'll send you over the materials before that for you to get familiarized with that. It's very important for us to do everything with joint endeavors for the generation ahead to promote lofty ideas of the Olympic Games, to foster a new generation of young athletes. In Mongolia, we work a lot along those lines, and we seek cooperation. Thank you very much. Thank you very much, Mr. Baatar. Thank you for being with us. Thank you for your fabulous presentation. And we are carrying through with that. And I invite my colleague and friend from Iraq, Mr. Ali Jafar, Mohammed, Samaka, on your take on sports diplomacy and the problems it can deal with.
Okay, great.
Okay. Good morning, everybody. شكرا دكتور أحسان على ترجمته إلى اللغة الروسية. الحقيقة الموضوع اليوم اللي راح نتكلم عنه.
Good morning, dear colleagues. We'll have several languages here, Farsi, Russian, and English when it comes to the International Council of Arbitration for Sport, ICAS.
تأسيس أول ماجستير
Значит, доктор Али говорит, что
I was one of the founders of the international law and legislation at the American University for Master's Program.
الآيكاس والكاس. وهنالك فرق كبير بين الآيكاس والكاس. الآيكاس هو المجلس الدولي للتحكيم الرياضي. هذا المجلس الدولي للتحكيم الرياضي واللي تشوفوه أمامكم هذا هو الجهة الإدارية والمالية التي تنظم عمل محكمة كاس.
So, first of all, what is this ICAS? What is the Council on International Law and the Arbitrage Court on Sport, the International Council of Arbitration for Sport?
هذه اللجنة أو الهيئة هي هيئة مستقلة وليس لها ارتباط بأي جهة رياضية.
Этот совет, который мы говорим,
This International Council is quite free, meaning it's not related to special federal sports topics.
и как видим на таблицу,
أوكي. وعندما نلاحظ أن المجلس الدولي للتحكيم الرياضي يتألف من 20 عضو.
вот совет международный
The International Council of Arbitration for Sport
20 член организация,
encompasses 20 members.
президент совета,
The highest level is the president, and there are 2 deputies to the president of the council, secretary general, and some of the participants of the members.
منين يتألف؟ لاحظوا هناك حوكمة في اختيار هؤلاء الأعضاء 20. 4 أعضاء من اللجنة الأولمبية الدولية، دول يرشحون من اللجنة الأولمبية الدولية.
значит, как их распределяем и как их выбирает этих 20.
So that is the distribution of those 20 members of this council and how they are appointed. The 4 people are appointed. They are members of the IOC. And they are appointed by IOC. The 2nd and the 4th member are from the Federation of International Sports Organizations, and that is the International Federation of Sports Organizations. 4 members.
Ну, совет олимпийские движения тоже.
are from the Olympic Movement Council.
والأربعة الثانية قلنا من الاتحادات الرياضية الدولية، والأربعة الأخرى من جمعية اللجان الأولمبية الوطنية. يعني اللجنة الأولمبية الوطنية الروسية، الأولمبية الوطنية العراقية وهكذا.
Several members are part of international federations, and third and the fourth member are from the National Olympic Movement.
الآن أصبحوا عندنا مرشحين 12 عضو في هذه اللجنة.
На этот уровне уже 12 человек.
There are 12 people, 12 members at this level.
من ال 12 أربعة أعضاء يرشحهم ال 12 اللي تم تعيينهم. ليش؟ لأنه أكو احتمال ما تم ترشيحهم من اللجنة الأولمبية الدولية أو الرياضية الدولية، الاتحادات الرياضية الدولية أو جمعية اللجان الأولمبية الوطنية، ما فيهم من الكفاءات الرياضية أو الكفاءات القانونية المؤهلة، وعليه يتم ترشيح 4 أعضاء من بين ال 12 اللي فازوا يرشحون 4.
Вот первые 12 человек, которые были...
The first 12 members who were appointed then within this council, 4 people are elected so that the level of sports topics would be distributed.
يرشحون 4 آخرين ويصبح 20.
И когда они...
And so it's 16 people here. Out of those 16, they appointed 4 members of this organization. 4 more members. Altogether, it's 20 people who are members of this council, the Court for Arbitration for Sport.
Да. Этот совет, он только распределяет финансирование.
This council allocates financing and deals with organizational issues, not interfering into the activities of the council.
محاضرتنا اليوم.
Вот сейчас
And now
арбитражный суд.
let's speak about the International Court of Arbitration for Sport.
Он, который выдает
Yes. ولهذا سميت بالكورت اوف اربيتريشن فور سبورت، يعني محكمة كاس، مختصر إلها كاس وانتم تسمعون بها دائما.
ну, название это как
CAS is the Court of Arbitration for Sport.
هو نفسه رئيس محكمة الآي كاس اللي حكينا عنها.
но вот председатель совета
The chair of the Council of the Court of Arbitration is also the chair of the Court of Arbitration for Sport.
секретарь.
And that's the Secretary General who appoints him.
إقليمية للمحكمة. يعني
Региона есть для этой арбитражный суд
And this Court of Arbitration
представительство.
has got regional representative office.
والأخرى في نيويورك والأخرى في الإمارات.
Одна из них в Сиднее, вторая в Нью-Йорк.
One is in Sydney, the other one in New York, third one in Abu Dhabi, the Emirates.
Есть здесь тоже арбитражный.
And here you can see also members of this Court of Arbitration.
Тоже арбитражный суд, это как,
وهنا
ну, как рассматривать.
And so it's first instance court.
وصل لأكثر من 300 حكم قاضي.
Вот это судей, уже судей.
And here is the judge who is making awards on such cases, and there is 150 intermediaries as well.
طبعا هاي المحكمة احنا فخورين أن يكون عندنا في الرياضة محكمة قراراتها نافذة.
Мы очень хотели, чтобы
We wanted very much to see the situation when all the words of the Court of Arbitration are really enforced.
Международные организации, которые находятся
This is very important.
جاءت بفكرة من سامرانش رئيس اللجنة الأولمبية في عام 1983.
вот это арбитражный суд,
This Court of Arbitration was set up based on my ideas since a long way back.
الحوكمة الآن في المؤسسات الرياضية واحد من الأشياء اللي يجب أن يتماشى مع القانون الرياضي. كانت هذه المحكمة مرتبطة في اللجنة الأولمبية الدولية.
Now, this arbitration court is associated immediately with the International Olympic Committee.
أغلب المنازعات الرياضية تأتي من الاتحادات الرياضية الدولية التي هي جزء من اللجنة الأولمبية الدولية، وبذلك راح ما يكون هناك ما يكون هناك عدالة، لأنه هو يصير خصم وهو يصير حكم، ولهذا انفصل.
So
арбитражный суд отделился от
so with time, it gets separate. It got separate from the International Olympic Committee to be more independent in decision making, because it's the judges are there to make sure that the decisions of the Olympic Committee are fair and just.
واي احنا لماذا المحكمة الرياضية؟ ليش احنا اسسنا المحكمة الرياضية؟
Why was the arbitration court created?
المدنية اللي موجودة في روسيا أو العراق أو مصر.
Why can we not go to a traditional arbitration court? Why do we need a special one? No, it appears that the decisions are achieved faster because this court deals with a limited range of matters and cases. Then there is one other important thing. The decisions are made faster, as we said, and that means the cost is lower.
ب1000 سويسري فرانك سويسري.
And whenever you address the International Arbitration Court, you pay just 1,000 Swiss francs for the claim to be accepted. And the judges that work in the arbitration court, they all represent the world of sports, so they're very well aware of everything that is happening in sports, and they're able to make quick decisions. And of course, their aim is to be fair and just in sports.
إنه هذه المحكمة لحد الآن كل قراراتها تنفذ وإلزام على الدول تنفيذها.
And finally, I would like to say that this arbitration court, the rulings of this court are binding for the parties involved. Let me repeat what I said yesterday. The Olympic Games without Russia
الألعاب الأولمبية بوجود روسيا
cannot be proper Olympic Games. There is nothing good in banning Russia. But the Olympic Games, together with Russia, that's what makes the international Olympic movement great. That was most interesting indeed. Thank you very much. Thank you. Now, would you like to say a few words? Yes, now, on your own. Yes, you're welcome. Thank you once again for your assistance with interpreting. And now, yes, we said quite a lot of things already. I just hope that I managed to to translate. Yes, it was, yeah. Anyway, indeed, we're meeting today at the Congress to discuss sports, people, and health. And these three elements are the elements which we have been working on in people's diplomacy. And we are I am the chairman of the Arabic community in Russia. I have been working here for quite a while, and since 2015 we have been organizing a conference, Sports, a Way to Peace Among People, among nations. Why did we select that particular title after we visit to some of the Arabic countries, Lebanon, Egypt, Jordan, we realized that we really were to pull our efforts together towards further development of sports culture. We understand that sports culture is very much dependent on diplomacy because it represents the highest level of human relations. So the exchange between the countries is very much needed. So annually in October, we bring together about 100 specialists from 12 countries, Arabic countries, and they all speak about relations in sports, about the development of research in sports, about culture in sports, and, well, of course, we discuss politics and economic relations and cultural relations. And we're doing that in Russia at the university for 2 days, and then at the academy established by the Ministry for Foreign Affairs, and the ministers of sports, athletes come, and we believe that this approach and the approach that we're sharing today, that's most important for proper building of relations. Today we can see here at the Congress real friends of Russia, and we should never distance from each other. We understand that it's true for the political arena, for sports arena, and if there are some sort of cancellation, if we're banned from the Olympic Games, then of course it's just an indication of that of the fact that they are probably envious and they believe that we might gain higher positions. Well, I'm happy to see all of you here, and I do hope that there will be a lot of work ahead of us, and the results of this work are going to be brilliant. Thank you very much. Thank you for your contribution and for your support. Colleagues, we have exhausted the program, and I can see that the coffee break was started. But if you have questions, then of course we will stay and we will answer your questions if there are questions. Do you have questions to speakers? No questions at the moment. All right, coffee break is with us. Allow me to say, finally, that, well, of course, everything that we discussed today in this or that way, discussing sports diplomacy or jurisprudence indicates that athletes should be in the focus of attention. Sports lawyers, diplomats should always work for the athletes in order to protect them and make sure that they represent our countries properly at the competitions. Thank you very much. Thank you.
Да, мы прежде чем
But before
эту дискуссию,
we round up the
пожалуйста.
discussion, Ola has a couple of words to say. Thank you for the invitation. These are souvenirs from Egypt. Thank you very much.
Спасибо. Вот теперь действительно все.
Thank you. Now that is it. Our discussion is over. Thank you.